Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yata Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagna Ragnatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sarvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padhan Sahagna Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubheva Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, thank you so much for having me back. Like I said, it's always a pleasure to be with you. And I love seeing the diversity we have in our community and hearing everybody's different questions. And yeah, really happy to be here. So shall I go ahead and share screen and then the Bihar Prabhu?
Yeah, if you want to, yes, if you're inspired.
Then I can just share the screen. Okay, so we are continuing with the 10th canto and chapter 89. We're on verse 57. Vavanda atmanamamanantamachuto jishnushcha tadarshana jata sadvasha Tavaha bhuma parameshthiram prabhur Vedanjali sasmitamurje agira. Translation: Lord Krishna offered homage to himself in this boundless form, and Arjun, astonished at the sight of Lord Mahavishnu, bowed down as well. Then, as the two of them stood before him with joined palms, the Almighty Mahavishnu, Supreme Master of all rulers of the universe, smiled and spoke to them in a voice full of solemn authority. Purport by His Divine Grace. Actually, no, these purports are by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, who are dipping into the teachings of our acharyas. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes the following observations on this verse. Just as Lord Krishna offered obeisances to his own deity during the worship of Govardhan Hill, so now also he paid homage to his Vishnu expansion for the purpose of playing out his pastimes. The Lord is Ananta, possessed of countless manifestations, and this eight-armed form is among them. He is Achyuta, never falling from his position, in the sense that he never stops engaging in his human-like pastimes as a cowherd boy of Vrindavan. Thus, to safeguard the special sanctity of his human-like pastimes as Krishna, he offered obeisances to his own plenary expansion. Lord Mahavishnu appeared before Krishna and Arjun as Bhuma, the supremely opulent one, and as Parameshthinam, Prabhu, the lord of multitudes of Paramas ruling over millions of universes. With solemn authority, he spoke in such a way as to bewilder Arjun in obedience to Krishna's intention. His smile hinted at his private thoughts, which Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has revealed for our benefit. My dear Krishna, by your desire, I will describe my superiority, even though I am your expansion. At the same time, however, I will subtly imply in my statements the supreme position of your beauty, character, and power, and the fact that you are the source from which I emanate. Just see how clever I am, that in front of Arjun, I'm confidentially divulging my true identity as non-different from you. So I'm going to repeat the translation. Lord Krishna offered homage to himself in this boundless form, and Arjun, astonished at the sight of Lord Mahavishnu, bowed down as well. Then, as the two of them stood before him with joined palms, the Almighty Mahavishnu, Supreme Master of all rulers of the universe, smiled and spoke to them in a voice full of solemn authority. So I'm sure you are keeping up with this particular chapter and what's been going on in this chapter. In case you have missed previous sessions or haven't, just a very short summary. In this particular chapter, it shares the pastime of a Brahmana who essentially he loses every single one of his 9 children, despite Arjun's help. And Arjun takes a vow that if he can't help him, he will take his own life. Before he takes his own life, though, Krishna comes to stop him. And he says, look, you've searched high and low for the answers as to why and where these children have been taken, but there's one place we haven't gone, and I'll take you there. So this is, Krishna has taken Arjun to see Mahavishnu, this beautiful 8-armed form of Mahavishnu, lying in the causal ocean, from whom and from whose respiration, as he breathes out, every single universe, so multitudes of universes manifest. And as he inhales in, each one of those universes retracts back and is unmanifest. So they've gone to see this Mahavishnu, described in so many beautiful ways. And, this is one of those bewildering verses. One of those bewildering verses if you took it in isolation. Because here we're seeing, we normally establish hierarchy of power based on who worships who, right? If you look at any company or organization, you look at, well, who does this person answer to? How do I know who's more powerful than this person? I look at who they answer to, right? We do this with everything. We do this in education, we do this in healthcare, we do this in the corporate sector. Any industry you look at, okay, if I want to know who's more powerful than this person, I look at who they answer to, or who do they bow down to? Who do they offer respects to? So this is another one of those verses in the Bhagavatam that could mislead one, because here we see Krishna and Arjun coming to see this 8-armed form Mahavishnu, who is manifest specifically to establish material nature. This 8-armed form of Vishnu is a partial, this 8-armed form of Mahavishnu is a partial expansion. And it's actually an expansion of an expansion of an expansion. If you study who comes before Mahavishnu. So from Krishna, we have Balaram, and then from Balaram, we have 4 forms of Vishnu. And then from one of those forms of Vishnu, Shankarshan, we have another 4. And then we get Mahavishnu. So actually, we're looking at least 9 or 10 times removed. Okay, so Mahavishnu is so great. And so Krishna is offering his obeisances. And Arjun as well, he's just amazed. I mean, when I was just visualizing and thinking about this scene of Krishna and Arjun on a chariot, now going to the causal ocean, where there's the beginning of everything, not just the beginning of our universe, but the beginning of every universe, where all the material elements are in their most rudimentary form. And amongst all of that lies this magnificent, huge Mahavishnu with 8 arms. I was bewildered just meditating on that vision. I was like, wow, and I don't even have the vision to see it, but just in my own mind's eye, just visualizing this particular verse was really, it was extremely moving. So it's bewildering to Arjun as well, as we see from this verse. And there are many verses that ensue after this. This verse could bewilder us. It could bewilder anybody just who took this verse on its own would think, oh, okay, well, yeah, Arjun I can understand, would offer obeisances to Mahavishnu. But if Krishna is really the Supreme Personality of Godhead, why is he offering obeisances to himself? So this brings up so many different themes in this particular verse just as a standalone. See, the first thing it brings up is verses from Shastra are complete in themselves. Prabhupada would actually, there's this very nice pastime where Prabhupada says that, actually, just Bhagavad Gita is enough to take you back to Godhead. Or just Srimad Bhagavatam is enough to take you back to Godhead. Or just Chaitanya Charitamrita is enough to take you back to Godhead. And then he said, no, actually, just one chapter of any of these books is enough to wake up your pure devotional service. Actually, he said, no, even one paragraph. And he said, no, actually, even one word of Shastra is enough, because every single word of Shastra is complete. At the same time, we understand Shastra through the medium of our teachers and the medium of our mind. Because on one level, until the mind, yes, we're trying to get the mind to be our friend. But until the mind is our friend and we fully understand it to be our friend, we still do take shelter of it. So there is the medium of the mind. So in this regard, one has to spiritualize the intelligence. And part of the process of spiritualizing the intelligence is at the same time that we understand that even one word of Krishna's words or Shastra is complete, all knowledge is within that word and has everything in it to reawaken our eternal identity. At the same time, because we have this filter, friend or enemy of the mind, and we have our various teachers, it is important for us to have context. And context is fed by a few different things. One is we have greater context the more we know. Okay, so the more we read, the broader and deeper our study, the more context we have. Okay, so Prabhupada would often say, scrutinizingly study. Ask questions. This is why we have classes every day in every temple. You start the day like that, scrutinizingly studying. Let's take this verse, let's unpack it. That's what Srila Prabhupada does in his purports. He unpacks, and unpacks doesn't just mean let's scrutinize the words that are here, but let's see where else we can look to. Now, every single one of Prabhupada's purports refers to other acharyas or another section of another book, or even the same book or somewhere else in that chapter. So he helps us, he trains us in how to get breadth and depth of our knowledge so that we are not bewildered by a verse in isolation. And let's just take, for example, so Krishna is bowing down to Mahavishnu. On the surface, this one could go, oh, well, then that means Mahavishnu is superior to Krishna. That means Krishna is secondary to Mahavishnu. And this then supports the idea that Vishnu is supreme and Krishna is just a secondary expansion. Okay. However, if we've got breadth and depth, and actually by 10th canto, we should have read the previous 9 cantos. But if we've got breadth and depth, we are aware that actually in the first canto, in the 3rd chapter in verse 28, it's very quickly established, very early on in Srimad Bhagavatam, that all of the above mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord. But Lord Sri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. All of them appear on planets whenever there's a disturbance by the atheists, And the Lord incarnates to protect the theists. This Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, that you are the root cause. So if one is reading with breadth and depth, if one is reading systematically as well, as Srila Prabhupada says, start from the first canto and move forward from there rather than just plucking out the 10th canto, one is less likely to be bewildered by Krishna's activities. Also, what's important is, as well as the medium of our mind and our intelligence, there's another very big and significant aspect is who is our authority? Who does our mind and spiritual intelligence surrender to when it comes to questions of Shastra or spiritual life, when we know our mind can't give us the full picture? Because we don't know what we don't know, but there are things where we know what we don't know, and then we default to authority. But what is the mood of the authority that we are defaulting to? Okay, is the mood of the authority that we are defaulting to in the pursuit of the conclusion of Shastra? Is the mood of the authority that we're defaulting to in the pursuit of my goals in my reading? So, for example, Srila Prabhupada quotes Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Srila Jiva Goswami, Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami. He quotes Lord Chaitanya. He quotes other Vedic texts. He quotes everybody who comes in our particular parampara. Why? This is how we also not just establish but maintain parampara, is we ensure that by sticking to those teachings who are in that lineage, we keep the knowledge unbroken. We stop the motivation from being tampered with. We stop it from being mixed up with not just philosophical misinformation, but tainted with other motives. So, for example, if somebody has a scholarly approach to scripture, their mood is, I want to become an expert in understanding this, to teach it, not in the pursuit of advancing spiritually, but to become a great knowledgeable person, then their teachers would also be pursuing the same thing. But because they're pursuing it just to understand the temporary, then all they get from scripture is a temporary understanding, a logical understanding. And the temporary and logical understanding of scripture means they will be chasing round and round in circles and never to come to any conclusion. Right? If you look at scholarly interpretations of even the Bhagavad Gita, there's no real conclusion. It's all allegory and analogies. And again, one is left with the question, who am I? It doesn't answer that question of who we are. In fact, scholarly interpretations of even the forget Bhagavatam and Citi, even scholarly interpretations of Bhagavad Gita can't tell you who Krishna is, let alone telling us who we are. So who is our medium? Who is our authority? What are they pursuing? And why was Shastra written in the first place, right? Krishna gives his own words to help us to understand him. But at the same time, he says in 9:11, in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and the 9th chapter is very interesting because it's the most confidential knowledge. Okay, it's in this chapter that Krishna really starts to show Arjun how he's so transcendental, who he actually is, how he is more than the beautiful boy who's his cousin and his friend who comes to his aid, how he does so many more things at the same time. Even though he is human-like, or humans are in his image, he is much more transcendental, both in his nature, in his appearance, his disappearance, his activities, and for all eternity, that he doesn't ever take on in material form. If we look at Bhagavad Gita 9:11, he actually says, fools deride me when I descend in my human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the supreme Lord of all that be. Because, it is a confidential thing to understand God in his most personal and private feature. His two-armed form, where he lays down his crown, he leaves his crown outside of Vrindavan. He doesn't have his crown in Vrindavan. His tu-arm form, his what appears to be a very human-like form. It's not human at all, but it is his most personal feature, his most loving feature, his most complete manifestation, and his original manifestation, and all attractive manifestation. It is the most intimate face of God. Krishna is the most intimate face of God. So when someone shows, when someone shows their most intimate face, they have to make sure that the person they're showing this intimate side of themselves to is qualified, desires it, is going to reciprocate lovingly, has no envy, is favorable, and is consistent in their desire to connect with the most intimate aspect of God. And that this consistency of desire is not mixed with any other motives. There's no secondary gain. If we think about ourselves, we're the same. If we are to reveal our most intimate and vulnerable self, that side of ourselves, we want to know that the people and person we're showing that side to want that. They want it without any other motivation, and they're going to be consistent, right? Otherwise, why would we let all the other aspects of ourselves move away to show that most intimate side? So in the ninth chapter, when Krishna speaks to Arjun, he speaks about how he is in everything, and everything is in him, how he is the beginning and end of everything, how he is the creator, the maintainer, and the destroyer, how he is everywhere and in one place at the same time, right? He explains all of these things. These are all contradictions. These contradictions that he holds, they make things inconceivable, but inconceivability is part of transcendence. Because if something is conceivable by our mind, that means it's no greater than our mind. If something is conceivable by our intelligence, then it is no greater than our intelligence. So when he says, fools deride me when I descend in the human form, they do not know my transcendental nature as the supreme Lord of all that be. He does this kind of on purpose as well. He does it to ensure that those who are approaching him are genuine. Because if someone is foolish, and what does he mean by foolish? Right? What does Krishna talk about as the greatest illusion? Greatest illusion is forgetting ourselves. When we forget ourselves and we fall into the illusion of thinking this temporary is me, this is a foolishness, right? So when we're stuck in that, we are easily bewildered by verses like this, where we are trying to measure God based on regular conduct, right? Regular conduct of human society is whoever you bow down to must be senior to you. Whoever you bow down to must be a controller of you. Whoever you bow down to must be greater than you. But actually, Krishna is so great, he can bow down to any part of himself. And this, if you look at Krishna's activities as Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, lifting Govardhan Hill, worshipping Govardhan Hill, playing with the cowherd boys, eating a packed lunch, becoming frightened of his mother, chasing him with a stick, some trickery during the Mahabharata, playing the role of a king, playing the role of a henpecked husband, all these different things. One could go, it's just an ordinary person. No, he's not an ordinary person. All of these activities are transcendental because all of these activities give him pleasure, give his devotees pleasure. They reestablish religious principles. They confuse fools, people who are really, really deluded by who they are. Filters out people who are not really interested in Krishna as a person. They're not interested in loving Krishna. It filters things out in us. When we come across a verse that we find difficult and bewildering, we can know 100% that's bewildering and difficult for me because there is something I'm attached to in this temporary sense of who I am, which I feel right now is more important than what this verse is trying to tell me. These verses, Krishna's words, are there to break our self-deception, our false association with the body. It's interesting when you read third canto of the Bhagavatam in the 12th chapter, in the second verse, it opens with the 5 types of nescience that Brahma creates before he even creates any living entity. Because, you know, he knows that this material world has been established as a bridge back to Goloka, as an opportunity for one to regain their original consciousness. But he has to first create material consciousness before we're allowed to regain our original consciousness. And it describes how those 5 things include, the first one is self-deception. Self-deception, bodily concept of life, the frustration arising from anger, illusory energy. You know, some of these things, they're at the core of our existence. It doesn't matter what body type you have, what mode you fall under, what varna you're in, what ashram you're in. Our challenges in this world are as a result of these 5 different types of deception. So when we are steeped in these deceptions, when we read Shastra, when we hear class, it is meant to be uncomfortable. It's not meant to be, oh, wow, this is just J nectar bliss. It's such a nice idea. There are meant to be verses in there that challenge our concept or ideas or illusion about who we are or who God is, what Krishna can do, what he can't do, what we can do, what we can't do. These verses allow us to see our self-limiting beliefs, whether they are about our gender, our color, our varna, our ashram, or any other limitation we place on ourselves that tells us that we are not allowed to access pure devotional service. And they serve as a distraction. And they serve as a protector for Krishna. It helps him to filter out those who are inconsistent, those who have mixed devotion, and run towards those who are consistent and who have unalloyed and unmotivated love for him and care for him. And, you know, this is a process, but this process includes that when we read, when we hear, we do so with context, and that context is enhanced by depth and breadth of study, but also by whose interpretation are we surrendering to. And in this way, we don't end up becoming the fool that derides him for his human-like activities. We don't end up becoming the fool that derides him for saying that something in Shastra that appears to be contradictory or appears to be racist or appears to be sexist, because he is none of those things. So, you know, this whole idea of who am I hearing from? Srila Prabhupada, he gave us Bhagavad Gita as it is, i.e., he gave us the Supreme Personality of Godhead as he is. No plenary expansion, no expansion of an expansion. Here's the Supreme Personality of Godhead as he is, transcendental, all attractive, reservoir of all pleasure. So that we can experience our full self. Eternally wise, blissfully connected. Sat Chit Anand. Because if we go for teachers who are only going to focus on God as an energy, the Brahma Jyoti, the most we will realize about ourselves is Sat, eternality. If we read Shastra and hear Shastra through those who worship God simply as the Lord in the heart, then at most we will experience Sat, eternality, and Chit, knowledge. Being eternally knowledgeable is great, but it's not so blissful. Living forever with full knowledge is not complete bliss. But when we connect, when we hear from Srila Prabhupada, who connects us with Bhagavan, Bhagavan is the source of Paramatma and Brahmajyoti. God the person, Bhagavan is God the person. God beyond, God the person beyond God, even, because he's only God some of the time. Right? So Krishna's God some of the time. When he connects us to him, then we get to experience eternality, knowledge, and the bliss of being connected. Because when we connect with the person beyond God, then there's bliss, there's joy. The joy comes from the relationship. That's where full, complete happiness comes from. Not partial happiness, okay? Even there's degrees of partial happiness in transcendence. Krishna talks about this. So for us, it's very, very important that when we're finding Shastra or class uncomfortable, stay with the discomfort, because it's there to break some of that self-deception. The self-deception, which is one of the 5 types of nescience that, Brahma creates before he creates any living entity. He has to create the 5 types of ignorances. So there was this side of this verse that I just thought, this is one of those curveballs, right? If you haven't read, you read this and impersonalists might throw this under your nose, or, Mayavadis, or those who don't accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the kind of verse that they will quote. This is why we need to read systematically, in context, with depth and breadth, and scrutinizingly, in the association of sadhus who are trying to attain the same goal as us. The other thing that for me just wowed me with this verse, and I'll wrap up soon to take your comments and questions and realizations, is that how wonderful that Krishna is offering respect to himself. Krishna really is the king of everything. He is the perfect example of everything. How wonderful. He respects himself, all manifestations of himself. It doesn't matter if it's a partial expansion or a partial expansion, or if it's himself or him as a hill, Govardhan Hill, or whether it's him as Lord Ram. It doesn't matter. Whenever you see the Lord encounter another aspect of himself, he's always respectful. He's always respectful of everything he creates, everyone he creates. He teaches us in this verse self-respect. He teaches us respect of others. He teaches us respect of everything that may come of us. And at the very least, neutrality, a neutral approach. It's interesting when you look at how Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur interprets this, how Mahavishnu receives the respect, but then glorifies Krishna in the verses that come later in such a way that actually establishes that, yes, although he's giving me respect, I am from him. Which subtly then also establishes for Arjun, because later on Arjun thinks, how great Krishna must be. He must be greater than Mahavishnu, because he arranged for all of this to happen, these 9 boys being killed, or 9 children, being killed, just so that he could have darshan of his source. So self-respect is such an important quality for a Vaishnava. It's important for every person, but for a Vaishnava it's so important, because sometimes on this path I've come across so many people, and we've all been guilty of it. We don't respect ourselves. We try to split ourselves off into parts, material parts and spiritual parts. As Srila Prabhupada says over and over again, there's no such thing as material. Right? We know from the invocation mantra for the Sri Shapanishad, Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purna Adha Purnam. Sorry, I got it wrong. I've recited it wrong. Om Purnam Adha Purnam Idam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. No, I did get it right. So what is this? The personality of Godhead is perfect and complete. And because he's completely perfect, all emanations from him, this world, even this world, perfectly equipped, that's complete wholes. And whatever's produced from that complete whole is also complete in itself. And because he's complete, even though so many complete units come from him, he also remains the complete balance. So this is spiritual mathematics. Why do we have a need to hate or disrespect parts of ourselves and split them into material and spiritual? Because that is also a type of self-deception. Whereas actually, when we understand that every part of me is equipped and can be used in the service of the whole, can be used in the service of Krishna, then we can follow in Krishna's footsteps and have more respect for ourselves, which will help us to have respect for other people and respect for everything that's created, whether that's the mode of ignorance or the mode of goodness. We don't even hate the mode of ignorance, because we see that the mode of ignorance also has a role to play in our life. For example, sleeping. It's necessary to have the mode of ignorance there to help us sleep. So Krishna is really just wonderful in all of the examples he sets, this respect that he offers, the humility that he shows. There's a in the 9th canto, in the 4th chapter, when Vishnu is speaking to Durvasha Muni about the offense he commits against Ambarish Maharaj, he says you committed that offense because of self-envy. Self-envy is present when there isn't self-respect. And when we respect ourselves, we take our spiritual life very seriously. When we don't take our spiritual life seriously, it's born because of self-envy. We are envious of our real self. So, and then the last point I wanted to make is Mahavishnu is part of Krishna's greatness. When somebody is great in their character, their expansions, their products, whatever they do, speaks to that greatness. And this is quite literally what is happening here. Krishna's so great that every expansion of him and every partial expansion of him speaks to his greatness. And Mahavishnu quite literally speaks to Krishna's greatness. So I'm going to stop there. I can see Bhima Prabhu already has his hand up, and I'd like to give you all some time. So my take home from here is, please read scrutinizingly with depth and breadth in the Association of Sadhus, and you'll find even when Shastra gets tough and uncomfortable, it will be relishable. And please give yourselves a little more respect and love, and take your spiritual life seriously, and respect all parts of yourselves. And I will also do the same. Hare Krishna. So Bhima Prabhu, over to you.
Haribol, Maharani. This is one of those classes that you want to make a recording of and make sure you hand it to everybody that you know. If you ran for office, I would vote for you, to say the least. You could be queen of the world. I think that this is something that we do not, we always talk about not committing offenses, but if you're in the offensive stage, which is that mad elephant, it's already too late. But as you said, respect, RESPECT, we don't use that word a lot. And that's what keeps us many light years away from offense if we're always first and foremost respecting ourselves, all of ourselves. And obviously, if we respect ourselves, we're going to respect others, right? From within to without. Thank you very much. Please, are you going to be able to stay for the after? Because I'm sure there's lots of people wanting to ask, lots of devotees wanting to ask questions. Are you staying for the afterglow?
I can do. I can stay. I can stay until 1:30. Well, here it'll be 1:30, so that'll be 8:30 for you, I think.
Well, that'd be wonderful. I speak for everyone. We want to hear more. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Citi Shakti, Devi, wonderful class. A question: if somebody stands corrected, if somebody has resolved to turn to Krishna, why does it have to take so long? Why all these austerities? Why all these purifications? Why Ekadashis? Why do I have to learn Shastra by heart? Why all those lessons? I'm already, Krishna, I'm yours. Take me. Why do I have to go through all these things? Why is it so difficult and lengthy and tedious? And joyful also.
I think it's very easy for us to say, Krishna, I'm all yours, especially when we're in pain, right? But often when we're not in pain, we actually forget about Krishna. We have to be honest with ourselves. What does Krishna say? Always think of me and never forget me. That is the acid test of, am I Krishna's? And not whether we have the feeling I'm Krishna's, or whether we've said it a lot of times or say it we have to ask ourselves, do I always think of him and never forget him? Are my body, mind, and words and heart and every feeling saturated in thinking of him? Because to the degree that we're not, to that degree, we're not saying I belong to you yet. Do you see what I mean? So all of the, bhakti is independent. Krishna can give us bhakti like this. Many of Krishna's devotees can give us bhakti like this. And they do. But how many layers have we put up between us and their blessing manifesting? And so all of these different things that we do, reading Shastra, following Ekadashi, associating with devotees, going through purification, humbling ourselves in the face of difficulty, okay? Apologizing even when we might not have done anything wrong that we can see. It's to break down those barriers. It's to break down those barriers. And because those, when I saw these very clearly written in English, these 5 types of illusion, and maybe we can speak about them in the afterglow, these five types of deception that Brahma creates before anything else. I thought, my gosh, these 5 types of illusion or thinking we have to get into to be able to exist separately from Krishna, to be actually separated from him, because he's so much part of who we are. If we distilled every problem we had based on this framework of these 5 types of illusion, our problems become a lot easier to solve. So, yeah, all of these other things are just there to help us break down our walls.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel like an onion with many, many layers, gross, stinky layers that
Yeah.
Men has a hand up.
I'm just thinking, because there's only 2 minutes left, I wonder, there's probably not time to take another question or comment now. Should we wait till the curtains open, or do you want me to take something now?
Let's take Minza. She's very concise. She's expert in asking pertinent questions.
Thank you so much for the class. Really, really appreciate it.
Hare Krishna.
I really appreciated the point you made as to how we should hear the Shastra with breadth and depth. And something you said really touched me, because I've been coming to realization that there's nothing like Shastra, the truth. Like, I could really rely on Shastra, but I do have problems with Shastra at times where I can't understand it, or it sort of touches something that's hurtful or within me. So I put them aside, and I know for sure 100% that it is something that I need to contend with within myself, that it's coming from me. So there's something you said interesting towards the end, that we're envy of ourselves. So I would like to hear more about that. I've been reading a book called Envy, the Competitor of Divine Love by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And it's a really great book. So I've been thinking a lot about what envy is, and obviously I have it, but I'm interested in hearing more about what is this envy towards itself.
It's 8 o'clock, so I will answer in the afterglow. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Darshan time. Krishna Kumari Devi ki jai.
That was a perfect question.
Jai Shri Shri Radha Muralidhar. Bhakti Center, please unmute. 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 Hare Krishna. Bhakti Center, please unmute. Unmute. Jai Srila Prabhupada. It's Hare Krishna Kumari offering garland to Srila Prabhupada.
Ananda Bihari, you have a guitar. You can sing in the background.
Thank you for putting me on the spot. I'm watching Ram simultaneously. I can't. But I promise I'll step up.
Yeah, you promised that 2 years ago.
I promised to Krishna that I'm yours and still, look.
Then do what I say. Get your guitar out one day and give us morning darshan or morning mangala prayers with play and Garangi singing. It's such a wonderful. You have a couple of videos, by the way, people. Our host is a wonderful singer and has a daughter who's a wonderful musician as well. And when they perform, it's really heartwarming, very heartwarming, which is a lot to say for a man and his guitar. Hare Krishna, like Adi. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Bhima Kaviraj. I'm a miniature Adi wannabe. Okay, I think let's go with the afterglow. So, Chiti Shakti, would you like to repeat the question? The cliffhanger question.
Yes, I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you're free to ask the question again. I believe you were asking to know more about this kind of self-envy and how that interferes with our kind of understanding of Shastra. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. This envy, self-envy that gets in the way of having a deep relationship with Shastra.
Yeah. Thank you. So I think just before your question, I'd also said, maybe we can speak a little bit about the 5 types of illusion that, or 5 things that Brahma creates before he creates the different bodies and planets, etc. So, these 5 types, if we boil it back down to these 5, and then the self-envy makes a bit more sense. So the first things that Brahma creates, actually, and if you want to look at it, it's in the 12th chapter of the 3rd canto of the Bhagavatam. He creates self-deception, the sense of death, anger after frustration, the sense of false ownership, the illusory bodily conception, and forgetfulness of one's real identity. See, we can't leave a place that exists everywhere. Okay? So when we say we left the spiritual world, but the spiritual world's all around us, it's within us. How can you leave a place that's everywhere? There isn't even a when to when we left, because how can you leave a place where there's no time? When did I leave? Do you see what I mean? But when we separate in that relationship with Krishna, the only way to really separate from a relationship, even if you look at human relationships, if you end a relationship with anybody, you may physically take space from them. You may not contact them again. But your memories of them and who they are and who you are in that relationship haunt you or bring you joy continuously, because you remember who you were and are to them. And we may even, to try and forget someone, not just move location, we may change our habits to not be the same person we were in that relationship as a way to break the relationship. But the memory of, because we always have some memory of who we were in that relationship, who that person is, and what our dynamic was, means that the relationship continues to exist in some shape or form. So really the only, and Krishna can't break his relationship with us, we are eternally bound to each other, okay? The only way we can separate from him is to forget who we are, to forget who he is, and to forget our relationship with him. So leaving him is quite literally a forgetfulness. So this is the thing. The first thing Brahma does is he makes us forget our real identity. Because without doing that, we can't live in these circumstances. Why would we want to live in a circumstance where we cannot be eternally connected, eternally wise, and blissfully connected? Why would we leave that unless we forgot that that's our nature? So the first thing he does is he makes us forget, okay? And then, of course, by forgetting who we are, the next thing that's going to come is we're sure to be afraid of death. So he has to instill that in us, because we're not used to death. That's not our nature. It's not our nature to die and be born and die and be born. So then we become afraid of death. Because we become afraid of death, we also start to cling to the things around us, thinking that they belong to us, when nothing belongs to us. Everything's borrowed. When people fight, we were talking about this the other day, when people fight over land, they spend their entire life fighting over pieces of land which are going to outlive them. What stupidness, no foolishness. That is false ownership. Okay? And, ultimately from that false ownership comes anger after frustration. It's false ownership that makes us frustrated when we think we should have something, or we're about to lose something that we have, or we think we own. That's when we get angry and frustrated, right? So all of this is self-deception. These are all part of self-deception. We are lying to ourselves when we forget our real identity, okay? So now we look at self-envy. If you look at envy, envy is on a spectrum of comparison, right? Everything falls in this spectrum. You look at comparison in the mode of goodness. It's comparison through admiration, right? It's, oh, I look up to you. I hope to be like you one day. Comparison in the mode of passion is jealousy. I want what you have. I wish I had it. but it burns because it's passion. It's kind of like a motivation, but a passionate motivation, which just makes us hanker for more. And then envy is comparison in the mode of ignorance. What does it mean? I want what you have, and you can't have that. So where does this self-envy come about that leads to offenses? When Vishnu is talking to Durvasha Muni, saying that your offenses are born of self-envy. Now, Durvasha Muni is an impersonalist. Okay, he's not surrendered to the supreme personality of Godhead out of love and affection. And so he has all these mystic siddhis. He can even go and see Vishnu face to face, but he doesn't love him. And he doesn't fully love himself because he's not nourishing his full soul. And when Durvasha Muni gets angry at Ambarish Maharaj for drinking water, he hadn't even done anything wrong. Even Shastrakli hadn't done anything wrong. It's because of self-proprietorship, this false sense of proprietorship, right? This sense of I and mine. I am entitled to a certain level of respect because of who I am. Now, his who I am is rooted in envy of his actual self. Why would the false ego envy the real self? Because the real self is eternal. The false ego is temporary. The false ego wants what the real ego has, which is eternality. The false ego wants what the real envy has, which is complete bliss. The false ego wants what the real ego has, which is all knowledge. The false ego wants all of those things. The false ego can't have them because the false ego is actually it's just an illusion in terms of, yes, we experience it as real, but it's an illusion. One way of looking at illusion is that which is short-lived, can only be held for a very temporary amount of time. From Srimad Bhagavatam, we understand that the 100 years of Brahma's life, which is a number which is we can't even really calculate. I think calculator would break, which is 8.6 billion years times 30 times 12 times 100, right? That time for Krishna in eternal times also for us is less than a moment, less than 1/11th of a second. So even if you add it up, if we had trillions of births in this 100 years of Brahma's life, or maybe we go through a few Brahmas, we're not away from Krishna or in forgetfulness for less than a moment. So how then is it any wonder that the false ego, the mistakes made of the false ego are born of envy of the real self? The false ego will never have what the real self has. It is self-envy when we don't nourish the real self. It is a lack of self-respect when we don't nourish the real self. So coming back to your question about Shastra, when there is pain in the heart, when we read something from Shastra, if that pain is not a longing of Krishna, when will I be close to you? Krishna, when will I reach that day when I will always think of you and never forget you? Krishna, when will I simply be able to serve you? Krishna, please, when can I have my service back again? I don't want to be separated from you anymore. Unless it's that type of pain, if it's any other type of pain, it's pain born of self-deception, sense of death, anger after frustration, sense of false ownership, the illusory bodily conception, or forgetfulness of one's real identity. And all of those things accumulate in self-envy. It is just another trick of the mind and the false ego going, whoa, 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 hang on a minute. Don't forget about us here. Remember what color you are. Remember what gender you are. Remember what varna you are. Remember what ashram you are. You can't be tolerating these things that Shastra says about, how you're not good enough for your gender, or not good enough for your color, or not good enough in your ashram, or not good. Remember your forgetfulness. Does that make sense?
Remember your forgetfulness.
Yeah.
You single-handedly sort of categorize like all my problems of when I come encounter shastras that pains me and angers me at times. And yes, they were all born out of my identification with this body and material designations. And so I understand where I am with that. Still doesn't really clarify and bring light to that stuck place. And coming back to what you spoke, how you spoke about this self-envy, the false self, envying the self who's eternal. Um, the way I'm understanding that is, sure, when we live that way, we also have the same attitude towards Krishna, God, that it's and it's a part of God that the false self cannot accept or cannot sit with and feel loved by that person. And that sort of bleeds into, or maybe it's, both ways, where the false self cannot accept this eternal self within me. And but the way you spoke about false ego sort of having this it almost speaks to false ego having an awareness
Yes.
of the true self, whereas I think for the most part, for me at this point in this path, like, I don't, right, so we're coming back to the forgetfulness. I'm not even aware that I am doing that I have a problem with accepting or seeing the eternal self within me, even though I did kind of emphasize in a lot in on the information of who the eternal self is and who God is. Satchitananda, I could only sort of sit with the eternality of the soul for a few years. I couldn't even go to, like, what is bliss? Like, can I experience bliss? I wasn't even really interested in that, because I really wanted to know what it means to be an eternal person. And an eternal God who is eternal. So I guess my maybe it's another question, or I have a gray area as to how to sort of move through this, the false self within me who can't be aware of the eternal self.
I hear you. You said you were, how is your false self aware of the eternal self? Sometimes we don't know things factually, but we know them by their symptoms, right? So I'm a physician, so, I know if I poke and prod my patients, whether I'm doing it in my psychiatric setting, I'm poking them, prodding them psychologically to see how they respond, or whether I'm doing it physically when they tell me they've got some physical pain somewhere. I will poke it and prod it. Those symptoms tell me that there's something else going on. They don't know what's going on, but they know there's something wrong, because when they're poked, it hurts, right? And they know where it is as well. So whilst you may not, I hear what you're saying, you're not aware of your spiritual identity, but your mind and false ego know very clearly that you're on a path of discovering it and recovering it. So we do treat the false ego and mind practically like they're separate entities. We have to, because we are not that. So if we are not that, we treat it like, okay, it's something that I'm affiliated with, I'm connected with, so I've got to understand it. When we're reading or hearing and we come across things which are sore points for us, some things that I've found helpful over the years is get clarification from others. Because if it's a sore point, like we say with all sore points, there's some disease there, okay? And that disease is unique and specific to us. Get clarification. And even if after getting clarification, it's still the sore point hasn't eased, file it. Sometimes some things literally, because our process, we were discussing this, I think I was giving a class for Africa last week. And there's this phrase that Prabhupada says, talks about how Krishna consciousness is automatic. Automatic doesn't mean that we do nothing, that we're supposed to be passive. There's an active process to automation. If you look at a car, and this analogy works really well, manual car and a automatic car, there's always a gear change in both. In one it's visible, in the other one it isn't. In one you have to do it yourself, in the other one it's happening underneath. Okay? Just because the mechanics are not visible to us, it doesn't mean there isn't an intricate plan. So The reason I say sometimes file it when something really agitates us, Krishna's in our heart. He knows where we've actively gone out to poke the sore points, tried to get clarification and healing, but it hasn't quite happened yet. He knows. This devotee is really trying. They don't mind being poked and prodded in the sore points. They want help, right? We know this as a physician. When a patient comes and is willing to be poked and prodded in the painful area, rather than going, no, don't touch me, okay, this person's ready to have help because they're willing to see where the problem is, right? Even if it hurts, to see where the problem is. When Krishna sees that, the automation that's going on in the Krishna consciousness underneath, the process itself, the way the Mahamantra affects you, the way it dissolves the false ego, the way it stabilizes the mind, the way it makes the mind clear and kills off the six enemies, all of that process that's automatic, but it has so many complex stages we can't see it. It's been made automatic for us. It works. It works. So we don't have to get so, I mean, he struck me as a very intelligent, articulate person who puts deep thought into everything they do. Sometimes we can take our foot off the gas with our intelligence and let the process work once we've done our bit.
Thank you so much.
Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. We can take one more question or a reflection. Something that stuck out to you in class. Devaki Priti.
Wow, thank you so much for your class. I almost don't even have words because I feel like through you answering her question, I just gained so much. And that part when you were talking about like the different things are like, oh, remember me, your body. Oh, remember me. This is how you identify. I was just like, oh my gosh, like I don't know, like it just really hit something for me. Like they're gonna keep doing that, but we have to keep remembering who we are. Like it just really like I don't know, just the way you articulated that was really, really powerful. And I so much appreciate your class and helping shake me up and remember that it's so easy because we're in a world where you're constantly people identify you a certain way and you identify yourself. So I'm just so grateful that you just helped me remember yeah, just who I really am, and I don't have to worry about this other stuff, you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Devaki Priti. You are a very sincere soul. Okay. So 824. Chita Shakti, can we hear from Krishna Kumari?
Sure.
Krishna Kumari.
I also feel the way Bhima does. I want to share your class with everyone, and I'm wondering if you're accepting disciples or friends of mine. So, I actually, something came up for me yesterday. I was in a class with Shama. She used to live at the Bhakti Center. Now she's down in Florida, very pregnant. She was saying that in the 7th and 8th month, that the baby inside remembers all their lives, like that everything gets remembered before they get covered over again, and like that they're actually experiencing like all those mothers and all those lifetimes, and they're thinking it's like a very intense time for the baby in the womb.
Mm-hmm.
I was just wondering if you've heard about this, especially in your
Yeah.
and what you would say to it. She didn't say much because it was a yoga class, but I just wanted to hear what your thoughts would be.
My understanding is from Shastra, from third canto of the Bhagavatam again, the chapters, I think it's either chapter 29 or 31 that deals with the development of the fetus. Is actually that's one of the chapters that kind of brought me to Krishna consciousness. But because I was comparing what Shastra says about how a fetus develops in the womb whilst I was doing my medical studies, studying embryology. And I was like, well, hang on a minute. These books are 20 years old. These books are 5,000 years old, and they have more information and it's accurately matched. So from there, I recall that actually the child remembers their previous 100 births in the first 3 months after they take birth. Some souls, whilst in the womb, will remember certain things. It depends on the evolution of that particular jiva. It's not for every single child, but the first 3 months of every living entity's birth. That's why, as a mother, if you've got a small baby, you'll sometimes wonder why, because human parents think It's either burp the kid, feed the kid, or put the kid to sleep. Or they're too hot or too cold. Think about the most basic things for their child, especially the first 3 months. And the first 3 months are difficult because sometimes none of those things work to bring peace to the child. Why? Because they're having their own, they've got their own very complex life going on in their mind. First of all, they're remembering these 100 births, okay? Because they're in transition and they haven't yet fully really got into this body and this life. The second thing is, your mind, ego, everything is very active. But here you are stuck in a helpless condition. You're dependent on someone else for your physical comfort, for your hunger, for your fatigue, for so many things, warmth, love, affection, but you can't articulate your needs other than crying. And unless your parent is very tuned in and really present from the heart, they'll just get frustrated by your crying. And sometimes the crying is just because of what you're remembering. Sometimes you see kids laughing for no reason. Nothing to do with you. It's probably remembering something, especially the first 3 months. So yes, there is that, which is why it's so prior to pregnancy, during pregnancy, after the delivery, spiritual consciousness always helps. Because life will always throw us something to remind us to forget. There is never a time where we can be too Krishna conscious. And understanding the importance of Krishna consciousness at different times of life, it's natural when somebody's becoming pregnant, wants to get pregnant, a couple want to get pregnant, or they are pregnant, or they've just delivered their baby, or they're raising their toddlers. They want to understand the impact of Krishna consciousness and the consciousness of the jiva during that time. But that is just as important as any other time. We understand from Shastra these different stages. For example, once you take Vanapras, when you're older, when you're a child, what is the consciousness of a brahmachari? We understand that there's no better or worse, or no time which is more important or less important. Every single period of our life is the perfect time to be Krishna conscious. It's never too soon and it's never too late. But yes, we can really help. It's never too late. So sometimes I see devotee couples get anxious about the fact that maybe their Garbhadan Sanskar, their preparation to invite the soul into the womb, didn't go according to plan. Don't beat yourselves up. Have the happiest pregnancy you can. Love each other. Love the baby. Be healthy. Be happy. Maybe your pregnancy didn't go well. Maybe someone's pregnancy is riddled with so much physical health problem or mental distress that they didn't have so much time to be able to worship and love Krishna. It's okay. It's never too late. Do it after that. You can still start again when the baby's born. Maybe the first day didn't go well. Doesn't matter. Start on day 2. Maybe the whole first week was horrible and terrible. You were up all night. You couldn't think of anything but wanting sleep. Doesn't matter. Start in the second week. Do you see what I mean? It's never too early, never too late. And whatever 100 births that soul has had, doesn't matter, because this birth they've got with you.
8:30. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, that was perfect.
Thank you, Chiti Shakti Devi.
Thank you very much.
We're going to ask Rupa Devi to unmute herself and recite the Maha Mantra to complete the offering for today. Rupa Devi, please.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Haribol.
Rupa Devi ki jai. Chiti Shakti Devi ki jai. His Holiness Maharaj ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Every this call ki jai. Hare Krishna. Have a wonderful week. Come again tomorrow. Srimad Bhagavatam never ends. It has all the answers. There's wonderful speakers like Chiti Shakti Devi. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Krishna, thank you.